Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. And before I get into everything else that I do in my introduction, I want to give a great shout out to Molly Biz. The cookies are so delicious, and I have a discount for you. You want to go on and check that out. And all you have to do is use the promo code, The Harboring. The cookies are so delicious, I'm telling you. And the story with it is impeccable. You know, she's a single mom looking to make a will out of a way. And that's the true American ingenuity that makes America truly great. And I love these cookies. They're delicious. They're so moist. You know how you get in the midst of eating something where it's, especially when you get into the aspects of factory made, is either sometimes it's just not quite right, but you can tell there's so much care and touch in the quality of these cookies. So go on and check the link, and my promo code is The Harboring. Check it out. So to lead on to the transition of that, before I get into the mess of everything about my topic, I really appreciate feedback, so feel free to reach out to me. And the best way to do that is the email format. All right, so some of the audio platforms that I'm on Spreaker, of course, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, just to name a few. Now, we're going to talk about the aspects of American Gothic literature. Here we go. All right, so before I get into my thoughts, to extend out to what I said about those great quality cookies, Molly Biz, you can get 10% off on your purchase. So don't forget to use the promo, the harboring, when you check out. So that's Molly Biz cookies, really good. All right, so my thoughts about the aspects of American Gothic literary style. So it's quite interesting when I was finding out the midst of these things. It has to do with I'm going in the realm of the aspects of what was going on in the 20th and 21st centuries to extend it out. So when you get, I think, for what he has done primarily, when you get into the aspects of everything, of all of that, when you get into the aspects of everything, Stephen King is very prevalent when it comes to talking about things like this, because he, it's unfortunate the way he is with the things that he says and has said, but the contributions that he has given is something to really consider. So when you think about and go into depth about the aspects of Stephen King's work, essentially what they center around is the aspects of people or someone, but particularly the senses is that they're going through severe emotional trauma and to the height of psychological. But that goes without saying, to the height of the psychological implications of this trauma. And so it might be in the essence of something that's more supernatural, where, they Salem Slide, or you have something like The Stand. There's countless examples, Carrie, The Shining, so forth. They all center around the aspects of people going through severe turmoil. And so this is relating into the aspects of what went on to American Gothic. So I was sitting around the aspects of talking about what is the social struggles that people are facing in that era. And then also, it's quite interesting, Edgar Allan Poe. He was one of the literary giants when it comes to this sort of genre. But it's quite interesting because, most of his work didn't center around the aspects of, but it just, that's what he's just most prolifically known for. Most of his aspects of his literary work did not center around the concepts of social mores of what is really troubling people when it comes to the mental instabilities or something psychologically draining to someone. So, and that's also an aspect of breaking it down to the different concepts of this when you go back to the 20th century, when we get into Southern Gothic, literary figures like William Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor. Now they're vastly different in their concepts of what they wrote about, but it all remained the same in sort of the aspects of breaking down the depictions or the thought process of the way people live in the Southern mentality of the way of life. And that's quite interesting in itself. And it depends on who you know, how you grew up. The aspects of being, Southern mentality is not all the same. For instance, for me, some people say, well, because I grew up in Houston, there's Texas in it, Yeah, some people don't consider Houston as an aspect of, the Southern, the deep Southern, in essence it's not, but it's still part of the South. But, it's more of a metropolitan where you get in the realms of New York, Chicago, and things of that nature. And then because of all of the different cultural facets that are in Houston, to the fact of Houston being, I don't know if it still is, but Houston being one of the fashion capitals of the world. Now, tech isn't all prevalent anymore there in Houston. It's more going towards Dallas, Austin particularly, and then oil isn't what it used to be. But you get my point, that it's more, there's so many different elements that goes on to Houston, to where people don't really think of or consider or realize that Houston, Texas is still a part of the South. So that's one thing. But it's another thing when I don't know, somewhere, even Atlanta, Georgia, some people don't really consider that, when you get into the different parts of Atlanta. Some people wouldn't consider it because of the different elements of how culturally it is different. But anyhow, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, so forth. There's a certain air or presence that is centered around the imagery when it comes to these things. And then particularly with William Faulkner and Flannery O'Connor, they were trying to break down the aspects of the problems within it. And particularly with William Faulkner, with his compelling arguments was a lot with the way people engage with one another and talk, and also with the aspects of, and that's more prevalent now. For example, I'm sure y'all all have been in situations where you can tell the other person is just, they're not really listening to you. They're just hearing what they want to hear, or they're just waiting until it's their time to talk, and then whatever you have to say is, oh, okay, sure. And so a lot of elements you can see were going on in William Faulkner's literary work that were making commentary about that. But on the other hand, Flannery O'Connor was centering her focus around the aspects of what do you do in the sense of when it comes to keeping your faith, when it comes to trusting people who are not ordinarily considered to be who you would deem as some trustworthy or something like that. And then what do you do in the aspects of, wanting to be a part of modern society, but you still want to stay true to your traditions. Now, a good example of this is a good man is hard to find, or something, because it's been a while since I've read her books, but something in the essence of like this, good man is hard to find, or something like that. And so you go into the story. It's this older woman. She is set in her ways, and then all these things, and then there's this stranger that comes to town. Now, instead of understanding why he is, for instance, down on his luck, and even more so homeless, so understanding, why, what happened, or, if you really want to be, good charity, or what being a good Samaritan as the aspects of this, the allegory of the Christian undertones that comes with the Bible story here. If you really want to be that, that noble person, the basic thing to do is understand the other person's plight, or what they think, just how they feel, in order to gain a rapport, or to, become more aware of your surroundings. But that didn't happen. She kept projecting what her thoughts were by saying, even though I am coming off as somebody that's going to help, I still want you to conform to be like me. And you're going to the point of berating him or belittling him to it where it in itself becomes this really violent end. And that was most of the undertones for the betterment of her work. It all centered around something, heightened the impact to where something severely violent had to happen in order to, in a sense, rid this thing to go to the next level. And some people have gone as far as to analyze this and say, well, to put it on a sense of the aspects of a cleansing. This is seen as, getting into the aspects of the allegory of that this immense sin, this act had to happen to cleanse the sin in itself. All right, so with all this said, I'm going to get into the aspects about different elements and details of American Gothic literature here we go. All right, of course, sources will be provided for you in this episode. All right, so this is the AI-generated response. It says the American Gothic literary movement emerged in the late 18th and early part of the 19th centuries as a reaction to the transcendentalist belief in human potential and progress, instead of emphasizing on the darker aspects of human nature, such as sin, self-destruction, and the presence of evil. It evolved from the European Gothic traditions, but adapted to uniquely American themes and anxieties, including frontliner fears, the legacy of Puritanism, racial tension. When you get Puritanism, being the Puritans, coming. So this is why people deem or say there were so many issues in the aspects of the development of the founding of our nation with the 13 colonies, because you have the different, of course they were escaping the aspects of England rule, but they brought forth with their traditions, particularly with the aspects of the spiritual beliefs of Puritans, Quakers, and so forth. Some thought that the Puritans were more snobbish in a lighter sense to say about their way of living or their way of thinking versus any other aspects of belief, which was in a lesser sense this detrimental to the aspects of escaping England with the not only the monarchy with the aspects of what you should believe, but also with the spiritual persecutions of if you're not abiding by the Catholicism and so forth, the way of the British rule of spirituality, then there's issues. So that's one point to see how people dealing with those issues would combat that and through their literary work. But that's also another point to bring into that wasn't the whole mean and purpose of how people saw after and viewed the aspects of the American values and how that trends into what the tradition of American values is and so forth. And that's the issues and the problem in which we are facing today, because most people think that the tradition in which we came from is based off of and the wrong kind of belief system, as they put it. But not everybody thought the same, and that's something to be said about that too. All right, so with it goes with self-destruction onto that and the presence of evil. And then also with the aspects of this, you get the racial tensions and the psychological burdens of natural identity. Sorry, just a minute. And I think a really good example of this to add on to that for those who went to college or they read it on their own, or anyway, how I found out about this book is it was an entry college level course about literature. And it really delves deep. Paradise Lost delves deep into the aspects of the human condition to where it engages the readers to have another point of view about what was originally told to us by the aspects of man's faith in sin and morality. You go through these aspects of wondering who really is the bad person, to the point of doing something that's sacrilegious by saying that, maybe that the aspects with, the devil, Satan, taking a second look at that. And that's something to think about too, how that adds into the aspects of how you can see, a book like Paradise Lost transcending to inspire literary work that becomes American Gothic style. What, baby? I'm busy right now, okay? I play with the kids. No, not right now. You gotta wait till the stuff out here dries, okay? Okay? Piper, just stay over here. Stay over here. Stay over here. Okay, so getting back to everything. All right, so continuing, it says, unlike European Gothic literature, which often featured ancient castles and medieval settings, American Gothic typically used decaying southern plantations, isolated frontier homes, or urban centers as its settled background and drops. Come here, Piper. Says key characteristics of American Gothic literature include a persuasive atmosphere of mystery, dread, and psychological intensity, often involving supernatural elements, death or terror, and the grotesque. The genre frequently explores the internal turmoil of characters through decaying elements that mirror psychological decay, as seen in Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of the Usher and Nathaniel Hawthorne's Young Goodman Brown. So Poe is widely regarded as the father of American Gothic literature, which works like The Telltale Heart and The Raven, exemplifying the genre's focus on madness, obsession, and the subconscious. So the movement also gave rise to the Southern Gothic as a subgenre that critically examines the values of Southern society through themes of aristocratic decline, moral and physical decay, and racial tension, with the prominent authors including William Faulkner, Flannery O'Connor, as I was mentioning, and also the add-on Harper Lee. The American Gothic tradition continues to the modern era with authors, as I was mentioning, Stephen King, to add on to this, Anne Rice, and H.P. Lovecraft, drawing on the legacy to explore contemporary fears such as technology, dehumanizing effects, and exploring contemporary fears such as such as works like Stephen King's The Shining. Hold on. And Ray Bradbury's The Velvet. So scholars have noted that American Gothic literature often functions as a form of oppositional literature, challenging the American dream by exposing repressed historical traumas such as slavery and the genocide of indigenous people. So, thereby revealing the national morals and psychological contradictions, the genre, including which appeals, lies in the ability to comfort the darker, often hidden aspects of individual and collective identity through haunting, mysterious, and psychological intense narratives. All right, so I'm going to take care of what my daughter wants, and I'll get back to you. Hold on. Get back to y'all just a minute. All right. All right, and to add on to this and to wrap everything up, I'm going to go into an article about the American Gothic tradition. All right. So, though the Gothic novel is generally associated, let me start. American Gothic, apart from being an infamous painting of a dreary farmer couple. And if you want to look at that, it has a picture or this well-renowned oil painting in my source. It says it's an infamous painting of a Jewish farmer couple. It's a unique subgenre of the Gothic tradition and is marked and as today is thought of as we celebrate and think about American aspects. So though the Gothic novel is generally associated with the creepy castles and misty moors of the old world, a unique strain of the literary tradition began to emerge in America almost as soon as the nation was created. The American Gothic fiction generally takes place in a distinctively American setting and tends to be characterized by themes of anxiety, as I mentioned, that were especially important to American discourse, such as religion, racial tension, and nature and wilderness. To add on to this, and rationalism versus irrationalism. So the genre also became blended with dark romanticism, an offshoot of the romantic movement that focused on melancholy, insanity, human bleeding, inabilities, the plight of being human, and the grotesque, all grounded in the individual. Just 15 years after the end of the American Revolution, the first Gothic novel written by an American author was published. And this was by it was called Wyland by Pennsylvania Quaker Charles Brockden Brown. It also takes place in the late colonial era and follows as many of the religious dissenters began hearing mysterious voices, as often happens in Gothic novels. So murder and tragedy ensues because of this. So the story deals not only with the particular permanent fear of religious fanaticism, but also plays with some of the contemporary theories of psychology, and it examines the causes of the mechanisms of insanity. So perhaps more familiar to modern American readers is the classic American ghost tale, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, by Washington Irving, which was published a couple of decades later. So Irving's short story takes place in a little town in the New York countryside that today remains synonymous with this tale. Though written while Irving was living abroad in England, the story emphasizes its Americanness by casting the main horror, the ghost of a man who died fighting in the American Revolutionary War. All right, so The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is quite interesting in aspects of what are the themes in this book. So, again, it's quite interesting how that translates into more modern work and that ensued after, because it was going into themes of the aspects of masculinity, chivalry, honor, and tradition, particularly when we get into aspects of American Revolutionary War and making nods to that and why people were fighting, what the real causes. And that in itself is rooted into what is really particularly unique about American traditions, because for the forefront of American tradition is always about questioning what is right in front of you and challenging and making things better and making things, a nuance of understanding people's views and trying to find a discourse within those things. And so I think The Legend of Sleepy Hollow really did that quite well. All right, so let me end on by saying, in the 20th century, the American Gothic tradition has given us such great writers as H.P. Lovecraft, who blends horror and science fiction set in his native New England, and Stephen King. Now, it's quite interesting and it's quite offensive when you get into the aspects of what has been going on as a popular narrative to dispel about H.P. Lovecraft. Some people have the unfound realities of saying that he was racist, he was this, when that's really sad, and that's why a lot of things get misinterpreted, because people do not take the time to actually understand the work. They only see what they want to see, and they want to only perceive what they want to perceive, and they don't want to take the time. It's much easier. Oh, somebody said this, so it must be true. Oh, I trust this source, so it's much. I trust this source of friend or source of because it's confirmation bias. If you want to believe something, you're gonna go out of your way to find it when you get into the realms of to confirm what you think the world is. And so, when it goes on with H.P. Lovecraft, his novels centered around people who were just the scum of the earth, and they got to come up from it, and they got their just desserts, so to speak, because rightfully so. And that's really gratifying, and it's really nice to see that really unfold itself out. And so it was even more of a disrespect when HBO decided to put their selves in the ring and tackle the aspects of what they say, oh, we gotta have to be more nuanced or whatever kind of bullcrap, and we're gonna create what is based on H.P. Lovecraft and have a show centered around particularly talking about the aspects of this, but it's about racism, and it's supposed to be this social stance, and it's just a mess. But anyway, as I said, it's good to understand the sources where things come from and then go from there. All right, so who blends horror and science fiction, often set in the native New England? In native New England, Stephen King, also considered the father of contemporary horror fiction, and Anne Rice, who gave birth to the modern vampire romance. So and then Anne Rice with the aspects of what was going on with Interview of a Vampire. It's quite weird, because now the book is quite different, but they can also, when they do the adaptation with Christian Dunst playing this character, it's one of those things. Don't literally have a child playing the role. My God, and it's just like it goes into the aspects of the Hollywood showing its butt, so to speak, about what they most of them how they feel in this disposition of talking about these subject matters. All right, so following a different evolutionary branch, this tradition also gave the rise of Southern Gothic and a distinct American subgenre, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to end on this, and to add on this. And I think a really good example to wrap all of this up is the Salem witch trials. And so with the Salem witch trials, when you get in the aspects of talk about the height of American Gothic issues, those are different. With a scarlet letter, those are different, elements here. But it also questions the aspects of something as real, concrete and evidence that these things actually happen. What happens when your just moral compass of what you believe spiritually contradicts with what reality is? And then, going in with the aspects of rationality and irrationality, how do those things blur when it comes to actually committing? And what with Bernie's killing these women, innocent people, women, children, all because of irrationality. That's something to think about here. How that adds into the element of the subject matter of American Gothic. And of course, I'd like to know what you all think. Feel free to reach out to me. This reaches the end of the Hard Green Light. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye for now.